We all make choices as adults in terms of what we like to eat or what we can eat. But how do you think you'd fare living with allergies as a small child? You'd be relying on some pretty awesome parents to keep you safe and out of harm's way. In Australia, food allergy occurs in 1 in 20 children, and there are about 2 in 100 adults who suffer from food allergies as well. Hey, have a listen to 3.5-year-old Kip English on what he is allergic to. Kip, do you know the things that you're allergic to? Can you tell me?
Egg,
Egg,
dairy,
dairy,
nuts,
nuts,
peanut butter,
peanut butter,
gluten,
gluten, yeah,
dairy,
dairy, yeah,
what else? Sesame,
sesame,
butter.
butter. That's quite the list, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, they're the foods that you're not allowed to have. What are you allowed to have?
Kit Funny chocolate.
Kip-friendly chocolates.
Watermelon.
Watermelon? Do you like broccoli?
Yeah.
Do you like carrots?
Yeah.
What other things?
Blueberries.
You're allowed to eat a lot of good food,
Yeah.
which means that you must be pretty strong.
Yeah.
How strong are you?
Ugh.
Pretty strong. Even though he's not allowed to eat nuts, he is a little tough nut. And at 3.5 years old, boy, he does a good job at remembering what he can and what he can't eat. He carries 2 Epipens with him everywhere he goes, and he started school this year. His mum says things that are simple for other parents, playgrounds, parties, barbecues, restaurants, they all have the potential to be life-threatening to Kip. Everyday events for most people are not everyday events for their family. Australia is ranked number 1 in the world for allergies. A food allergy research report shows treatment for anaphylaxis rose over 400% in the last 10 years. Why is that? No one knows, but science is trying to find out. And today I'm joined by paediatric nurse Heidi Young from the Nest CPR to help you understand a little bit more about allergies. Heidi, it feels like every kid has allergies these days. Is that correct to assume it's more common than it used to be?
Yeah, it's definitely more common without a doubt. We now know that 1 in 10 under 1-year-olds is diagnosed with a food allergy, and many of them have that right up until school age and beyond. So when the older generations say, oh, there was, no such thing as allergies in my day, or that they don't think that it's that common now, when actually back sort of 30 or 40 years ago, there was probably only 1 child in the school that had a food allergy. But now we know it's much, much more prevalent.
Why do we have more allergies in 2021 than 1991?
Well, that's the $1 million question, really. We don't actually know a definitive answer to that, but there's some pretty good kind of studies out there that show that for instance, there's been a study about children that are not born in their parents' country of origin to have a much higher rate of allergy, food allergy, than if they were born in their parents' country of origin. So they've shown that Asian families, if a child is born in the country that the parents are born in, Asia, then they're much less likely to develop food allergy than if that child is born to Asian parents in, say, Australia. And because Australia has like the highest, it has one of the highest rate of food allergies in the world, but it's also extremely multicultural. So that kind of maybe points to why there's such a high rate here. But we also basically the guesswork is that it's probably environmental. We live in a very different world now in the last couple of decades. Environmentally it's a completely different planet. So that has to play part and parcel towards those rates, we think.
Can you explain what an allergy is?
Yeah, so an allergy is when the immune system overreacts to a substance that's normally harmless in the environment. So like food, pollens, pet dander, things like that. So what happens is that we are exposed to an allergen and the body produces something called IgE antibodies, and they sort of sit on the cells in our body. And then when we're exposed to it again, so they just sort of sit there dormant, and then when we're exposed to it again, those little antibodies make your cells release histamine, which is the itchy stuff, and what also can create the anaphylaxis symptoms like lower blood pressure, the clogging of the arteries and making your breathing difficult and all those kind of things that we know as anaphylaxis. And that's basically what allergy is. It's an immune system response to something that should be harmless.
Mm-hmm. And can you inherit an allergy? Say if, my mum was allergic to something, would that mean that I would be?
You can do. There is an increased risk of, say, if you have an allergy and you then have a child, there is definitely an increased risk of your child having an allergy, but equally they may not. So it's not a given. But I think the stats are roughly around about 40% that if you have allergies, or if there is a sibling with allergies and then another baby comes along, that they could also develop allergies. But it doesn't necessarily mean they would be the same allergies.
And how are they treated? Do some people become, I guess, like desensitized to it? And are there like desensitized treatments?
So you basically have to, with food allergy, you pretty much have to wait for your immune system to be ready to allow that food in without an allergic reaction. So there are kind of places that will do oral immunotherapy to foods, but it's not regulated in Australia yet. So if anyone's thinking of undertaking oral immunotherapy to a food, like a nut, for instance, then definitely do your research, because it's not actually regulated in this country yet, but it is available in the US. But what the US don't talk about is the high rates of anaphylaxis when they're doing that kind of thing. With pollens and dog, cat, horse, dander, you can actually have immunotherapy through injection or drops in the mouth, or little wafers under the tongue for dust mite allergies. So there is desensitization options for that, but there's no desensitization options regulated in Australia at this time. But we do food challenges, and that's when we do, you've got a child with food allergy and they see the specialist every year or every 6 months, and the skin prick tests and the history tell us that child is actually becoming their allergies, they're growing out of their allergy. So then we may choose to do a food challenge, and that shows us if the allergy is still there or not.
There's been some interesting new research out from ANU about a protein that can potentially stop allergic reactions. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it seems that what that is that they've basically found this protein that will prevent the excess formation of that IgE that I talked about. So the IgE forms when a child is sensitized to a food, and it sits on the cells, and then when they're re-exposed to that food, so they eat it, for instance, it tells the cells to release a histamine. But it looks like this protein stops there being so much production of that IgE in the first place. Therefore, the release of histamine wouldn't be so much, if you like. Therefore, the reaction would be less. That, in a nutshell, excuse the pun, but that seems to be what they found at the moment, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. Many young parents are mentioning that there is an Epipen shortage every time they fill their scripts. Do we know if anyone is working on a solution for this?
No, there is a new company recently that's come out. I believe it's called the Epipen. I think it's the Epipen. But basically, Epipen have the market in Australia, and they have done for a really long time. So at the moment, there's always been shortages. Unfortunately, I don't know why. Maybe that is a reflection of the increased rate of food allergy, that they can't make enough. To get by, but it unfortunately they expire every year, so people need to buy them all the time. And also, because people are getting so scared about allergies, I do like classes for parents, and the question I get asked a lot is, should I just buy an Epipen in case my child has a reaction when I'm introducing food? And I always tell them, please don't, because you're just going to leave the families that really need it without EpiPens, so we just need the Epipen manufacturers to, double the supply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The families that do really need them, I mean, it is terrifying for them. We heard earlier on from 3.5-year-old Kip, who has a wide variety of allergies. And so it is scary for his parents. Every time they go out, they carry 2 EpiPens with him. Because of the increase in allergies that we've seen over the last 10 years, is that one of the most challenging things in terms of dealing with older generations who may not have been exposed to people with these kinds of allergies? Do they not take it seriously enough?
Yeah, this is the trouble. I think a lot of the time it may be that they're just not taking it serious enough, but it's also a case of you just don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So if people aren't living with it, they're not highly sensitive to it. So I don't live with it, but I have spent 6 years working really closely with families with food allergy. And I've only got a glimpse of really how it must be, in a playground with a child walking around with a peanut butter sandwich. I mean, that peanut could be everywhere, and this reaction could be life-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only imagine what it must be like. Every time I've had so many parents say to me that COVID lockdown was such a relief because it gave them an excuse to just not have to go out and about, not have to go to parties, not have to go to gatherings. Especially with other family members that just didn't understand. And, every time you order from a restaurant or your mother-in-law makes something, to eat, you basically you feel like you're blind. You don't know what's in it. And it can be really difficult. But the other issue is that people get intolerance and allergy mixed up. And they think that if they can just give their child, someone else's child something, or the worst that will happen is that they'll have an upset tummy. But an intolerance is something completely different. It's the digestive system and it's not life-threatening. An allergy is very much life-threatening and it's the immune system. So that there is a lot of confusion around that as well. And intolerance obviously is also really common. So people can get confused. And like I say, if they're not living with it, they just don't know a lot of the time.
What would you like the public to know about allergies? Is it just really a matter of being really honest and just asking, being upfront?
Yeah, definitely. Just, ask people. Now we've got 1 in 10 under 1-year-olds diagnosed with a food allergy. The chances are someone in your mother's group or someone in your circle is going to have a child with food allergies. So just ask, be upfront, be accommodating. Don't leave children out of parties that have food allergies. Collaborate with their parents. Ask them if they want to stay. Don't make these parents feel like there's something wrong with their child. Try and increase awareness. If your child is 4 or over, or even 3 or over, children can be really savvy with knowing what they're allergic to, and when they're offered food, saying, oh, does this have egg in it, does this have milk in it? The main thing I would want to say to parents is that we now know that if you don't have a child with a food allergy, we now know that introduction of the common allergy foods under the age of 1 is how we can drive down the rate of childhood food allergy, because it's almost like the immune system not being surprised because we're getting the food in there early. So that is a really big push right now. There's so much evidence out there to say that we actually need to get these foods in between the age of 4 to 6 months and up to 12 months. We need to get the top 9 allergies in the diet, and that will be the best thing you can do to avoid your child developing allergies, even if they have a family history of eczema or asthma. We need to be doing that for sure.
Heidi Young is from The Nest CPR. She is a paediatric nurse. Heidi, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Bye.
Weekends with Andrea Gibbs on ABC Radio.